Pause. Right now. The screen you are staring at, the phone in your hand, the computer on your desk, the satellites orbiting silently above your head, all of it. Every single pixel, every calculation, every text message, every heartbeat of the digital world is built on just two things: 0 and 1, off and on, nothing and something. Two tiny ideas that together became the most powerful language the universe has ever known. And here is what almost no one tells you. The man who first dared to think this way did not live in Silicon Valley. He did not wear a hoodie. He did not have a billion-dollar company. He lived in ancient India over 2,000 years ago. His name was Pingala, and this is his story. Welcome. Welcome to Numbers and Narratives by Blesswright, the channel where we go beyond textbooks, beyond classrooms, and beyond what history chose to remember to find the stories that truly changed everything. I am so glad you are here today, because what you are about to hear is not just a history lesson, it is a revelation. It is the story of a Sanskrit scholar, a poet, a musician, a man of ancient India who somehow, centuries before computers were even a dream, laid the very intellectual foundation of the binary number system. And I promise you, by the time this video ends, you will never look at a computer the same way again. If you are new here, please subscribe to this channel right now and hit that notification bell, because we tell the stories that numbers have been waiting to tell for thousands of years. And if you are already part of this family, welcome back. Now, before we dive in, I want you to stay with me until the very end of this video, because I have saved something truly striking, a detail so surprising, so profound, that it will completely change how you understand Pingala's legacy. Trust me, you do not want to miss it. Close your eyes for just a moment and imagine India. Not the India of smartphones and software engineers, though we will get there. But India as it existed more than 2,000 years ago, a land of rivers and forests, of temples and sacred fires, of scholars who memorized entire libraries in their minds because paper was precious and knowledge was sacred. Imagine the banks of a great river where a man sits in the stillness before dawn, surrounded not by machines, not by numbers in the way we think of them today, but by rhythm, by sound, by poetry. This is where our story begins, not in a laboratory, not in a university, but in the ancient, thunderous world of Sanskrit verse. Pingala, and scholars debate his exact dates, placing him somewhere between the 3rd century BCE and the 2nd century CE, was a scholar of the Chandas, the science of Sanskrit meter. Now, you might wonder, what does poetry have to do with binary code? Everything. Absolutely everything. And understanding that connection is what makes Pingala's genius so breathtaking, so almost impossibly ahead of his time. In Sanskrit poetry, every syllable is either long or short. That's it. Long, called guru, meaning heavy; short, called lagu, meaning light. Heavy and light. Long and short. 2 states. Only 2 states. Sound familiar? It should, because this is the heartbeat of binary logic, on and off, 1 and 0. Pingala looked at the building blocks of language, the very atoms of sound, and he saw something no one before him had ever seen. He saw that these 2 tiny distinctions, heavy and light, could combine to create infinite complexity, infinite beauty, infinite structure. Just as 1 and 0, just as 0 and 1 can build every program, every video, every song, every human voice ever digitally recorded. In his monumental work, the Chanda Shastra, which translates roughly as the science of meter, Pingala did something extraordinary. He did not just describe poetic rhythms, he systematized them. He built a complete mathematical framework for cataloging every possible combination of long and short syllables. And to do that, to count them, to organize them, to move between them, he developed a method that operated in base 2, binary. He assigned symbols to represent light and heavy syllables, created a system of notation, and developed algorithms to convert between his system and ordinary counting numbers. Algorithms in ancient India, 2,000 years before the word algorithm itself was even coined, named centuries later after the Persian mathematician Al-Khwarizmi. Let that sink in. Let it truly, deeply sink in. Pingala was not just writing a manual for poets, he was, perhaps without fully knowing it, inventing the mathematics of the future. He was writing the first draft of the language our entire digital civilization would one day speak. Now, here is where the emotion of this story swells, because Pingala did not live to see satellites or smartphones. He did not live to see the computers that NASA would use to send men to the moon, computers that ran on the very binary logic his mind had touched. He never knew that his careful, methodical, almost meditative work on the syllables of ancient Sanskrit hymns would one day be recognized as the intellectual ancestor of the entire digital age. He sat by that river, or in that temple courtyard, or under that ancient tree, and he simply followed the truth wherever it led him. He followed the logic of sound, and the logic of sound, it turns out, is the logic of everything. Think about what that means for a moment. Think about the loneliness of genius. Think about what it means to discover something so fundamental, so deep, so world-altering, and to absolutely have no idea, to write it all down in a treatise on poetry, to hand it to your students, to watch them copy it carefully onto palm leaves, generation after generation, not knowing, not one of them knowing, that what they were preserving was not just a guide to Sanskrit verse, but a key that the future would desperately need, a key that would eventually unlock a world Pingala could not even have imagined in his wildest, most visionary dreams. The Chanda Shastra was passed down through centuries. It survived invasions and fires and the grinding passage of time. It was studied, commented on, built upon by generations of Indian scholars. Halayuda, a 9th century Indian mathematician, wrote a commentary on it, and in doing so described what we today call Pascal's triangle, the same triangular pattern of numbers that the French mathematician Pascal would get famous credit for centuries later in Europe. Pascal's triangle, in India, in the 10th century, as a commentary on a work written perhaps 1,000 years before that. Understand, this is not myth. This is documented history. This is scholarship. But let us come back to Pingala himself, because his genius goes even deeper than most people realize. In the Chanda Shastra, Pingala also made early references to what we now call the concept of zero. He used the Sanskrit word shunya, emptiness, in a context that gestured toward the mathematical idea of nothingness as a value, as a placeholder, as a presence. Think about that. Zero and binary, the two ideas that are the absolute bedrock of modern computing, both of them, touched by this one man in one ancient text, in one country, in one language, in a world that did not yet have a word for the technology those ideas would one day make possible. The world, when it writes its history of computing, tends to begin with Charles Babbage and his analytical engine in the 19th century. It speaks of George Boole, the English mathematician who formalized binary logic in the 1840s, Boolean logic, the logic that powers every computer chip ever made. It speaks of Claude Shannon, the American mathematician who in 1937 showed that Boole's algebra could be implemented in electrical circuits, making digital computers possible. These are great men. Their contributions are real and monumental. But the story, the full, honest, complete story, begins much, much earlier. It begins in Sanskrit. It begins in poetry. It begins with a man named Pingala, who looked at the rhythm of ancient hymns and saw in that rhythm the rhythm of the cosmos itself. There is something profoundly moving about this that I want you to sit with. The modern world is obsessed with speed, with newness, with the idea that progress is always forward, always accelerating, always pointing toward some glittering future. But Pingala reminds us that the deepest truths do not belong to any era. They do not belong to any civilization. They do not respect the timeline we have imposed on history. The truth of binary, the truth that all complexity can emerge from the interplay of two states, two choices, two possibilities, that truth was waiting in the universe long before Pingala found it. And it will be true long after our computers have turned to dust and something we cannot yet imagine has taken their place. Pingala was not an engineer. He was not trying to build a machine. He was a student of beauty, of the beautiful mathematics hidden inside human language, inside the ancient Vedic hymns that his culture held sacred. He was trying to understand meter, rhythm, the music of words, and in doing so, he stumbled, or perhaps he was guided, depending on what you believe, into one of the most consequential discoveries in human history. He discovered that two is enough, that just two things, heavy and light, long and short, 0 and 1, can describe everything, can build everything, can become everything. I want you to think about this the next time you pick up your phone, the next time you send a message to someone you love, the next time you watch a video, even this very video on your screen. Every single one of those actions is happening because somewhere deep inside the machine in your pocket, deep inside the wires and chips and electrons racing at the speed of light, there are only zeros and ones, heavy and light, guru and lagu, Pingala's language, still speaking, still alive, still the foundation of everything we have built. His name is not in most history books. Most children around the world will go through 12 years of school and never once hear the name Pingala. They will learn about Babbage, they will learn about Turing, they will learn about Edison and Bell, and perhaps even Boole, but Pingala, the ancient Indian poet-mathematician who first dared to think in binary, he remains for most of the world invisible, unknown, uncelebrated. And that injustice, that quiet, painful erasure, is part of why we are here today, part of why this channel exists, because numbers have narratives, and those narratives deserve to be told. What Pingala accomplished in the Chanda Shastra was recognized by historians of mathematics like George Gevorgys Joseph, who in his landmark work, The Crest of the Peacock, documented the non-European roots of mathematics. Joseph and other scholars have painstakingly traced how binary representation in Pingala's work predates Western binary mathematics by nearly 2 millennia, 2,000 years. We are not talking about a few decades of priority. We are talking about a gap in recognition so enormous it staggers the imagination. And yet the knowledge survived, because truth is stubborn. Truth does not care whether it is credited or celebrated or acknowledged. Truth simply is. The Chanda Shastra survived. It was copied and recopied on palm leaves. It was chanted and memorized. It was carried across centuries in the hearts and minds of Indian scholars, who may not have understood its full mathematical implications, but who knew instinctively that it contained something important, something worth preserving, something worth passing on. And they were right. They were so profoundly, magnificently right. Now, I want to take a moment, because this story is not just about the past, it is about you, right now, today. You are living in a world that runs on Pingala's logic. Every app on your phone, every email you send, every medical scanner in every hospital, every electric car on every road, every spacecraft exploring the outer edges of our solar system, all of it relies on binary computation, All of it traces its mathematical DNA back to that ancient, extraordinary moment when a scholar in India looked at the rhythm of sacred poetry and saw the heartbeat of the digital future. There is a word in Sanskrit, drashta, that means seer, someone who sees what others cannot see. Not a prophet in the religious sense, but a mind so clear, so disciplined, so attuned to the underlying patterns of reality that it perceives truths that will only become visible to everyone else centuries later. Pingala was a drashta. He saw the binary structure of the universe before the universe had given us any machine capable of running on it. He saw the logic before the technology. He saw the code before the computer. He saw the answer before most of humanity had even thought to ask. And so today, as we use devices of almost incomprehensible power, devices that connect us to every human being on Earth, devices that carry more computing power than was used to land men on the moon, we owe, in some quiet and profound way, a debt to this ancient poet, to this scholar of rhythm, to this man who looked at the syllables of sacred hymns and found hiding there in the spaces between sounds the mathematics that would one day make our world. And now, as I promised you at the very beginning, the striking detail, the detail that changes everything. Are you ready? Here it is. The binary system that Pingala described in the Chanda Shastra, his method of representing long and short syllables using a positional notation, operates in exactly the same logical structure as modern binary code. Not approximately, not similar, exactly the same. When computer scientists and historians of mathematics analyzed the Chanda Shastra closely, they found that Pingala had essentially described a method for converting between binary and decimal representations, the exact same kind of conversion that sits at the heart of every computer processor on Earth today. 2,000 years ago, without electricity, without silicon, without any conception of a machine, just a human mind, one extraordinary, disciplined, visionary human mind, and the truth it was able to see. Pingala did not just inspire binary thinking. By any honest mathematical reckoning, Pingala invented it, and that changes everything. History is not always written by those who discover. Sometimes it is written by those who are loud, those who are Western, those who arrive at the same destination later, but with more documentation and more institutional support. But the truth, the beautiful, stubborn, indestructible truth, has a way of surviving. Pingala survived. His ideas survived. And today, every time a computer turns on, every time a processor fires, every time a 0 becomes a 1 and a 1 becomes a 0, Pingala's ancient insight echoes forward through time. Heavy, light, 0, 1, on, off. The rhythm of the universe, the rhythm he heard first. If this story moved you, if it made you see the world even a fraction differently, please share this video, post it, send it to someone who loves history, send it to someone who loves technology, send it to someone who needs to be reminded that genius has no passport, no century, no color, no border. Like this video if you believe Pingala deserves to be remembered. Subscribe to Numbers and Narratives by Blessright so you never miss a story like this one. And leave me a comment below. I want to know, did you know about Pingala before today? Let me know. The numbers are waiting. The narratives are just beginning. I will see you in the next one.